Hello, I'm William Drew, Director of Content for the World's 50 Best Restaurants, and welcome to New Horizons, part of the 50 Best Online Recovery Summit that we've been running over the last 3 days across our digital channels. If you missed any of these sessions and would like to catch up on the conversation, these are all available to watch at your leisure on our YouTube channel, 50 Best Restaurants TV. Stay with us for the next 40 minutes or so for what will be a stimulating, informative and hopefully inspirational session looking to the future of gastronomy, how it's changing, how it needs to change, and outlining what we at 50 Best are doing to play our part in driving positive new developments. We'll address the key issues of sustainability, of social and racial justice in hospitality, and we'll look over the horizon to 2021 and beyond. This includes a major announcement on how we are investing in the next generation of talented people shaping the food system, and concludes with important information about the World's 50 Best Restaurants 2021 event sponsored by San Pellegrino and Aquapana. We will also take a few moments to celebrate the rich and broad variety of restaurants continuing to lead the way across the world. Destinations we hope to return to and which remain beacons of excellence in stormy times. First, I think we've all spent some time this year reflecting and pivoting, trying to stay alive and then to thrive. But how do restaurant businesses not only recover, but rebuild in the correct way that puts us in a better place for the future? So we've joined forces with Food Made Good Global, 50 Best Sustainability Partner, to look at how we can make better and more sustainable choices in our day-to-day lives. Next, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for this New Horizons session of the 50 Best Recovery Summit. 2020 has been marked not only by the COVID pandemic, but also by the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, following yet more incidents of police brutality, in particular in the US, and the ongoing global protests that have followed. The cries of enough is enough from the BIPOC community have, quite rightly, made us all, as individuals and as organisations, look in the mirror and consider if and how we are contributing to the problem, and more positively, how we can be part of the solution. The hospitality sector is far from immune from such issues around race, gender and economic exclusion. We all have a responsibility to create a more equitable food world for every person working in it and interacting with it, and to match words with actions. Our guest speaker will set out a blueprint for change that aims to help shape a more socially and racially just future in the restaurant world. That speaker is Jamila Robinson. Jamila is the food editor and restaurant critic of the Philadelphia Inquirer in Pennsylvania, USA, and has enjoyed a successful and varied career in the US media with a focus on food and lifestyle. She's the chair of the James Beard Foundation's Journalism Committee, where she's pushing for significant change, and she also acts as a mentor in the Foundation's fellowship program. Over to Jamila Robinson.
Hi everyone, I'm Jamila Robinson, and I'm so excited to be here with you all for the 50 Best Recovery Summit. Today I want to talk a little bit about building a longer table and this idea of what steps we can take for more equity in food media, restaurants, and beyond. I always like to think about how we're eating right now, especially in this moment of a global pandemic, as we've shifted from going out to eat 3 or 4 times a week in restaurants to takeout and outdoor dining and delivery, and so much has shifted to home cooking. Before the pandemic, media organizations were really thinking about where to eat. It's restaurants, 50 best restaurants. And then that trickled down into communities. The 11 best restaurants in your neighborhood, 5 Chinese restaurants you can't miss, the new restaurants or best restaurants of the year. We were focused on where to eat because that's how media organizations gained audiences. That's where the engagement was. That's how people spent their time. But we also know that during that time, we relied on institutional voices that left out a lot of women and people of color. A lot of the restaurant industry has been cloaked in anonymity, secrecy, abuse in some cases, and a lot of whisper networks. We upheld a lot of unfair labor practices. Tipping in the US, we know, has been problematic since the Civil War. And overnight, with the pandemic, this has meant we've had to re-examine all of these things, from our institutional voices to how we communicate with communities, how we think about chefs, how we think about their positions in communities. 80% of independent restaurants in the US reported that they may not survive the pandemic. So we know we have to consider change. And we also know that the systems that we've had in place need examination. Sometimes they need to be thrown out the window. And we have to really consider how we build new relationships. And for that, I'm really optimistic. That's because food is our cultural currency. And as we consider these moments of social justice and becoming a more equitable society, we have to remember that food is our cultural currency. That's something the New York Times food writer Kim Siversen likes to say. It's a moment of radical change. We can really think about all of these small incremental steps that we've been trying to take. Oh, we have to bring in more women. Oh, we have to bring in more people of color. Now is the time to really think about the cultural impact of restaurants. It's an entry point for building all of these stronger connections. It touches the economy, labor, social justice. Restaurants impact politics and immigration. It's where we think about gentrification and racism. It's also where we think about entertainment and travel and sports. It touches every sector of our society. I like to say it's the art form we all participate in. And with that, that means it's a building block. And that means we can build equity into those systems. So how do we get there? There are a few things I'd like for you to consider. And that's to reset your defaults. Reconsider what you perceive as normal. Think about who is the person who's coming to your restaurant. Who is your customer? What does that person look like? And do they share the same race, culture, religion, neighborhood as you? So how do you start to think about who is your customer? Even the flavor profiles that restaurants bring in, or the trends that we start to think about what we're going to be eating. Are those trends coming from European or Asian countries? Or are we also thinking about the foods that are being eaten in Brazil or Paraguay or Argentina? What trends are those people thinking about? We also want to consider the imagery in everything that we do, from social media, our menus, our advertising, those RFPs when you're going to investors and you're thinking about your PowerPoints. Are all the hands the same? As we start to think about who is a potential customer, we can start to think about how to bring more people in. I also want you to think about all the things that are cloaked in anonymity and how you can democratize information. In the US, Black women earn only about 60 cents on the dollar in comparison with white men. So when people ask me, what are some ways I can be a better ally? And I'll say, tell me how much money you make. Real hard numbers. Consider cookbook advances, even for restaurants or authors. Some people may only make a few $100s on a book proposal, where other folks are making millions. By sharing that information, we can become a more equitable society, and we can start to break down some of the disparity in pay. That also means re-examining investments and partnerships. Think about how women and people of color do not have access to the same capital. And so when you're an investor trying to think about how to bring in new restaurants, look around the room and see who's not there, and examine those silences and examine those absent folks. How can you bring more people in and investing in communities? And as we're thinking about how to build up neighborhoods and build up communities, maybe those investments are also going to chefs and women of color. I also want you to think about being uncomfortable. You know, we've seen on a lot of food media, there may be some things that folks just don't necessarily agree with or they don't understand. And that feeling of discomfort is normal. Even when we just think about what recovery is, that idea of having to work through some kind of discomfort so that you can build the capacity to be stronger. So we're in this moment of recovery, and change makes people uncomfortable because it also makes you temporarily incompetent. So I always like to think about, how can you get better? How can you practice? I mean, remember, even if you make a cake the first time and it falls, my grandmother used to say, just make it again until it's right. We have to build up the capacity and practice equity. We have to practice building in and asking, are we treating people fairly? Are we thinking about communities of color? Have I included more women? That is something that we have to engage in constantly, and that takes practice. But we can build up that capacity. And I think you can build up that capacity by building new relationships. You know, we are a community, from food media to the restaurant industry. We are intertwined in our own space. And so my challenge to my reporters and almost anybody that I work with is to think about how we can tell stories about people who aren't in the communities we live in. So that means getting outside of ourselves and then creating opportunities for people outside that community. So that means reconsidering everything from your supply chain, the bakers you work with, the winemakers, the farmers in your supply chain. Are you buying from community gardens that may be in your neighborhood? What about a women-led butcher? Have you thought about how the supply chain can be a way to keep people out? Also, you have to audit those relationships. Think about it if you are going to host an event for your restaurant, and there may be marketers or event planners. You also have to audit and find out if those folks are treating their workers and their staff fairly. Do they have a diverse staff? It's not enough to just say, oh, I'm working with women. But then you also have to ask, are those women all white? As our demographics change and as we become closer, we have to make sure that we are making opportunities for people outside of our communities. And we also have to be sure that all of our relationships uphold our values. So how do we do that? You can define new structures. Seize this opportunity to be bold and just ask for more. At the Philadelphia Inquirer, we have this North Star to dismantle systemic racism in our culture and our coverage. That's a very, very big idea. But we also want to think about, how do we break that into smaller pieces and create new structures? So this year, for our dining guide, we are not doing the 25 best restaurants. We are looking at people who bring the food to us. And that is a new structure for lasting change. It's also going to bring in more women and take us into neighborhoods that may have never been in a Philadelphia Inquirer dining guide. And I think that is something that the restaurant industry can really consider, is changing that criteria, re-examining those relationships, and thinking about how you can be stronger in your community. We are a community in media and restaurants, but we can also build a longer table. You know, there's this cliche there, we always like to say, oh, food brings us together. But we also know food, from food insecurity, poverty, the environment, it also keeps a lot of people apart. So I think as journalists, as restaurateurs, as chefs, and across our industry, we can find ways to build stronger ties with all of those communities so that we can be a more equitable system. Food does touch every sector of society. Restaurants are pillars of the economy. And if we are telling great stories about restaurants, we are telling great stories about communities. And as we look for recovery, I'm looking forward to having a stronger system where we leave behind a lot of the things that weren't working for us, and we take the best parts of the restaurant industry and we share that with the rest of the world with great storytelling. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to be with you, and I'm looking forward to 2021 and being with all of you in person.
Thank you, Jamila, and we hope that Jamila's message will resonate across many parts of the globe. Welcome back to New Horizons, where we are looking to the future. The 50 Best organisation has also taken time to reflect this year, as well as pivoting to focus on supporting the industry through its 50 Best for Recovery programme, of which this summit is a part. And as we approach 2021, we have an important new initiative to outline, one which seeks to look beyond restaurants and bars and aims to champion a new generation of talented individuals from across the world who are genuinely shaping our future. Now let me hand over to Laura Price to tell you more about our next chapter.
For almost 20 years, 50 Best has been celebrating the finest restaurants and bars on the planet. We've held events in Bilbao, Bangkok, Melbourne, Mexico City, and so many other places to celebrate with the chefs, restaurateurs, and bartenders who make these restaurants and bars so special. We've developed a strong and vibrant community of people from all corners of the globe, and together we've moved to celebrate the hospitality sector and to push for positive change in some of the areas we feel are of vital importance. We've shone a spotlight on cities and cultures that weren't always seen as global destinations for great food and drink, and we're proud of our efforts to bring attention to some of the more undiscovered corners of the world. So what's next? People. People are at the heart of every restaurant and bar in the world. But we don't just want to celebrate the people who work in bars and restaurants. We want to celebrate the people who power the entire gastronomic universe. We're talking about every area of the food chain, from small producers to independent farmers, educators, app developers, and scientists. We're thinking of the growers who champion new sustainable methods. We're focusing on the young activists who dedicate their time to fighting for the issues that matter. These people are gastronomy. Gastronomy isn't just about fine dining. It isn't even just about food and drink. It's a collection of relationships between a diverse range of people around an ecosystem whose common denominator is food and drink. That's where 50 Next comes in. 50 Next is about the people who are shaping the future of gastronomy. So, starting today, we're looking for 50 bright young minds from across the globe who are taking positive action in their chosen field. Applications are open to anyone aged 35 or under. If you're older than 35 and have started on a brand new career path, you can also apply provided you have a maximum of 3 years experience in your field. The idea of this list is to celebrate the young people who are pushing boundaries and fighting for new solutions and a brighter future for gastronomy. As you may remember, we held the world's 50 best restaurants in Bilbao in 2018. We're very proud to be working again with the Biscay region as the official host destination partner for 50 Next. The first 50 Next list will be published on the 22nd of February 2021. We are also proud to be working with the Basque Culinary Centre as our official academic partner for 50 Next. The gastronomy experts at the Basque Culinary Centre will be helping us to research and assess all of 50 Next applications and to select the list of the 50 brightest new talents. 50 Next is a list, but not a ranking. There is no hierarchy, and it is not a competition. The list will celebrate and shine a spotlight on the people who are truly paving the way for a brighter future. Unlike the 50 best lists where you can't nominate your own restaurant or bar, you can nominate yourself or someone else for 50 Next. And in fact, anyone can nominate an individual who they think is deserving of such recognition. So, what kind of people are we looking for? It could be a developer who has created an app to help people reduce plastic use. It could be a farmer using pioneering sustainable growing methods. It could be a writer who has brought to light important issues in the gastronomic sector. Or it could be a chef with a game-changing approach. If you think you are one of these people, just follow the link to the 50 Next website and apply. Or perhaps you know one of these people, a producer who supplies your restaurant or bar, for example. In that case, just go to the website and tell us why you think they are worthy of recognition. Applications are open now and for the next 4 weeks, and we want to hear from you. And of course, it wouldn't be 50 Best without the involvement of some of the greatest chefs and gastronomic thought leaders in the world. Over the history of the world's 50 best restaurants to date, a total of 8 restaurants have achieved the title of the world's best restaurant. They then ascend to a special hall of fame called the Best of the Best. Now, as we welcome the next generation of future shapers, we will seek to draw on the experience and leadership of the people behind those restaurants. So, over the coming months, you'll see content and interviews related to 50 Next and the Best of the Best. And they will act as informal mentors to some of those budding gastronomic stars from the 50 Next list. We are so happy to have the support of this amazing group of best of the best chefs and restaurateurs, from Ferran Adrià to Massimo Bottura, the Rocca brothers to René Redzepi. And we are so excited to move forward into this next chapter of 50 Best history. We would love for you, our community of chefs, restaurateurs, bartenders, food and drink lovers, international media and partners, to get involved and spread the word about 50 Next. So, save the date, 22nd of February 2021, for the announcement of the first edition of 50 Next, a list of people shaping the future of gastronomy.
Hello, I'm joined by Laura Price, Project Manager for 50 Next, which we've just been hearing a little bit about. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you very much, Will.
So we're going to recap a little bit. Laura, this is a new list from the 50 Best organisation.
Exactly. So 50 Next is a list, but it's a very different list from the ones we know with 50 Best. So where the world's 50 best restaurants and the world's 50 best bars are lists of restaurants and bars, 50 Next is a list of people.
And this is not ranked, correct?
Exactly. So that's another way that it's very different from 50 Best. It's not a ranking from 1 to 50. It's just a straight up list of 50 people who are all being celebrated equally for their talents.
And this moves beyond just chefs and bartenders themselves.
Exactly, yeah. So for the first time, we're really celebrating the whole of the industry, the whole gastronomy industry. So producers, farmers, scientists, app developers, educators, you name it. Everyone who has something to do with gastronomy is going to be part of this list.
Okay, so you don't even have to work within the restaurant or bar sector necessarily to apply?
Not at all, no. And in fact, there might be people on this list who are actually don't even consider themselves part of gastronomy. So for example, let's say someone's a scientist and they have developed something in the scientific world in a lab, let's say, that has had an impact on the food world or the gastronomy world. They would absolutely be eligible for 50 Next. So we really want people to kind of think outside the box when they're looking at this list.
So we're talking about activists, campaigners, writers, that sort of thing?
Absolutely, yeah. So it could be an activist who has been campaigning for change in food policy in their country. It could be a writer who has highlighted important issues. And
when can people apply for 50 Next?
Today. So we've actually just opened the applications today and they're open for 1 month. So the 12th of November is the deadline.
And I'm right in thinking that not only can you self-nominate, but you can also nominate other people.
Exactly. So that's another area where it's completely different from 50 Best. So 50 Best, you could never nominate your own restaurant or bar, but with 50 Next, you can nominate yourself and you can also nominate someone else.
So Laura, tell us precisely who can apply for 50 Next.
So 50 Next is open to anyone from any country, any nationality, any location around the world under the age of 35. However, if you're over the age of 35 but you've had recent career change, you've gone on a totally new direction, then you can also apply provided you've been in that new career for maximum of 3 years.
So we're working with the Basque Culinary Centre in San Sebastian on this project. Tell us a little bit more about their involvement.
Exactly. So the Basque Culinary Centre is our official academic partner for 50 Next, which means that they will be helping us to sift through all the applications, to research and talk to the applicants, find out more about them, what makes their work fantastic, and then they'll be helping us to select the final list. Now the Basque Culinary Centre, as you know, published the annual Basque Culinary World Prize, which this year was awarded to the amazing Jose Andres.
Laura, tell us about the involvement in 50 Next of the Best group.
Okay, well, first of all, I should probably explain what the Best of the Best group is. So, as you know, over the course of the almost 20 years history of the world's 50 best restaurants, there have been 8 restaurants that have been crowned #1 or the world's best restaurant. Now, those restaurants now compile a sort of hall of fame, which we call the Best of the Best. And because we want to really draw on the leadership and expertise of the people behind those amazing restaurants that have achieved so much, we are now getting those best of the best people involved in 50 Next. So they will be able to pass on their leadership skills and learnings to the next generation, which is something we're really excited about and they're really excited about too.
So they're going to have a kind of mentorship role to some of these young people who are making their way in shaping the future of gastronomy.
Exactly, yes. So they might be involved in talks, they might be having direct communication with people from this list. They'll also be featured in articles and interviews on our channels. So yeah, there's lots to look forward to.
Yeah, it's really exciting to have this group of best of the best chefs and restaurateurs involved in 50 Next, because these people have been inspirations and shaped gastronomy themselves over the last 20 years or so. So, Laura, we want people to spread the word about 50 Next.
We do. So aside from telling people to apply and sharing the link on how to apply or nominate someone else, we also want people just to get excited. Share this on your social media channels, tell your friends, tell everyone you know in the industry. We just really want to get excited about 50 Next.
Why 50 Next and why now?
Well, 50 Next is something we've actually been working on for a long time. We have always felt that we've celebrated sort of, you could say, the elite of the fine dining world or the gastronomy world, and we really want to kind of look towards the next generation and nurturing the people who are, you know, particularly the young people who are doing really exciting things and looking towards the future. In terms of why now, obviously over the last year we've had the pandemic and you know, it's been devastating for the entire industry, but we think that 2021 is hopefully going to be a time of optimism, and by launching this project we can kind of embrace the positive things that people are doing and really help them to thrive and grow those projects.
Okay, Laura, so let's remind everybody, where do they go to apply or nominate?
theworlds50best.com/50next.
And when is the deadline for applying for 50 Next?
Thursday the 12th of November 2020.
And what is the date that everyone needs to save in their calendar for the publication of the list next year?
22nd of February 2021.
We are nearing the conclusion of this event, but remain with us for some final important news. We were not able to host our annual awards ceremony and we decided against publishing a list this year. However, we firmly believe that 50 Best has a positive role to play in the future of gastronomy, not only in discussing key issues and challenges, supporting the sector and creating new opportunities for all, but also in celebrating restaurants across the world and opening up new destinations and discoveries for curious diners. We aim to continue in that mission, while at the same time evolving to be much more than just a list. In 2021, we will launch 50 Next, we will expand the 50 Best Scholarship Programme, and we hope to be able to restart the 50 Best Explores series as and when international travel opens up and an appetite for exploration returns. We also very much hope to bring the gastronomic world back together to celebrate the world's 50 best restaurants. Keep watching to find out where and when. In a moment, we will send you on a global culinary tour spanning all continents and showcasing the diversity of brilliant eating experiences on offer, whether in your home city or further afield. For cocktail lovers, the world's 50 Best Bars 2020, sponsored by Perrier, will be announced on November the 5th in a virtual ceremony, so tune in to our 50 Best Bars channels for full details. Check out our final film over the next few minutes, concluding with an important message. On behalf of 50 Best, thank you for watching New Horizons and being part of our 50 Best Recovery Summit.